Hello, in this lecture we're going to continue to work on some shorter test type problems, same type of problems that could be small enough to be in a multiple choice format. So we have here a corporation has two operating departments, D and G, and an office. The three categories of office expenses are allocated to the two departments using different allocation methods. The following information is available for the current period. We have office expenses, we have the total, and then we have the allocation. So we're going to allocate it based on the number of employees. So that makes sense for the salary. We're going to allocate it based on employees. And then the depreciation, 21.5, and we're going to allocate it based on the cost of goods sold. And then the advertising, we have the 44,500, and we're going to allocate it based on net income. So notice what we're doing is we have these two departments. We don't know the exact use of these things. We don't know how much salary to allocate between these two departments. We need to figure some way out. Ratios are a common way to do that. So we're basically going to use ratios and use these factors to drive those ratios to allocate as best we can. So the amount of total office expenses that should be allocated to G for the current period is, do not round your intermediate calculations. Okay, and then we have over here the items, the number of employees, the net sales, and the cost of goods sold. So these are the dollar amounts we need to allocate to G and D. We're focusing on G. And we're going to do that based on these factors. We need to allocate these dollar amounts based on the number of employees, net sales, and cost of goods sold. So I'm going to basically copy the same information. I'm going to put our little table down here and say we have this is the information. All we need is really G's stuff here. So I'm going to copy G's stuff and write that down. That's G stuff, and then I'm going to have the total here. So the total. These are what we care about. And of course, what is that total? It's the D and the G. So number of employees, this plus this, that's the 3001. But what we need to do is make a ratio based on this. So we're basically going to compare the total and compare the amount allocated to G versus the total. So if we did that in a calculator, that would be a division problem. This is a ratio. We'd say, okay, well, that's 1860 divided by the 3100. That gives us 0.6 or 60%. If we do that in Excel, then we're just going to say, well, okay, that equals this divided, divided by this, and enter. Now I'm going to change the format of the cell. I'm going to go to the Home tab, Alignment. We could add decimals to see the decimals, or of course we could just make it a percent. All right, and we're going to do the same thing for these other two. I'm going to say it's going to be this amount divided by the total net sales. And that'll give us 59%. Now it's rounded here. So notice it's rounded. I'm not going to take that away right now, but note that this particular problem told us to unround it. So we might be off by a penny or something like that. But I think it's important to note that Excel will basically calculate based on the real number, even though it is rounded. So keep that in mind as we go. And then we're going to say the cost of goods sold is going to be the G divided by the total once again. And we get the 63. Now, of course, the other half of it would be going not to G, the other portion, the 40% in this case would be D's 1240 divided by this would be 40%, and that would give us the 100%, but we are just focusing on G's allocation here. So now what we're going to do is we just have to line these up with the appropriate dollar amounts we need to allocate. So in this case, we have 33,000 of employees that we need to allocate to G, employee wages or whatnot. And we're going to say that G is going to get 60% of those times the 33. And this problem, it's a little tricky because they put the depreciation second, which is allocated to the cost of goods sold, which they put third over here. So you got to be careful that they actually lined this one up a little bit tricky here. So we're going to put this down here and say this is the 21.5. And we're going to say, okay, so that's going to be 63% of times the 21.5 of the depreciation allocation, and then the advertising is based on net sales, which kind of makes sense, right? We're going to allocate more to net sales based on advertising, and so we're going to say advertising here is going to be the 44.5 that we are going to allocate 59% of it, 59 times the 44.5 going to the department G, and if we sum these up, then we're going to get our total allocation, which will be the 59,659. And remember, there is rounding, so it could be plus or minus $1 or so. Next one says that company has 2 service departments and 2 operating production departments. The payroll department services all 3 of the other departments in proportion to the number of employees in each. The maintenance department costs are allocated to the 2 operating departments in proportion to the floor space used by each. Listed below are the operating data for the current period. Okay, so basically what we have here is that we have these 4 departments. 2 of them are in the production. So what we need to do is first allocate out this information to the departments that need to be allocated out to, meaning payroll, basically to the 3 departments, and then the maintenance needs to be allocated to the production departments because they need to be included in the production. So we're looking for the total cost of operating for department C, so we're going to focus in on C. So in order to do this, we're gonna first have to allocate out the payroll to all the departments, and then allocate out the maintenance once it has been stepped up for the amount of payroll that will be allocated to it. So we're going to have to kind of a step-by-step process on this. First, we're going to allocate out that $22,200 in payroll. We're going to do that by using ratios related to the number of employees here. So we have the number employees. I'll just abbreviate here. It's going to be for the departments is going to be 24, 24, and 72. That's for the maintenance department, the C and A departments, and we're going to sum that up then and get a total. So this is how I generally like to see the totals here. I'm going to underline that in the Home tab. We're just going to take a ratio now and ratio this out and say, okay, well, 24 over 120. That's going to be 20%. Then we'll do that all the way down and get these ratios. So I'm going to say in Excel, I'm going to say this equals 24 divided by the 120 total. And that means that, the ratio of employees to the maintenance department, I'm going to go to the Home tab, numbers. We could add numbers or make it a percent, 20%. Same thing for C. So we're going to say 24 divided by the 120. And that's going to give us, if we format it again, Home tab, numbers, percent, 20. And then we're going to say the 72 then over the 120 must therefore be the, let's make that a percent, 60. So, and that of course, if we added that up, which we don't really need to, but if we do, that will give us the 100%. So there we have that. Now we have the allocation. We're going to use those now to allocate the 22,000, 22,000. So I'm just going to put that all the way down here. Whoop, 2. All right, and then we'll just multiply that out. So 20% of times the 22,2, and then we're going to say this equals 20% times the 22,2, and this equals the 60% times the 22,2. And if we just wanted to check our work, then if we sum this up, it should all add up to the 22,2. So the 2 that we're kind of focused on here are these 2 now. Those are the 2 that we are focused on because we have now allocated out this number. That's done. And now the maintenance is what we need to allocate out. But that maintenance now is no longer 30,000 because we have now included payroll of 4,004 into it. So it's going to be increased, of course, but it's going to be 34,440. So that's what we'll now allocate that out. Now we got to allocate this maintenance to the production process. And so we have to step it up by the amount that we allocated from the wages, and then allocate that amount between C and A. We're going to do that based on square footage. So we have the square footage here, and that's going to be the 11.8 and the 16.8 for the C and A. So we have C and A, and we're going to allocate between them the 11.8 and the 16.8. And then I'll sum that up. We'll total that up. Sum of those. And underline this cell. I'm going to go to Home tab and underline. And we're going to do the same type of ratio thing here. So we're going to take this 11,800 divided by the total of 28.6, for example, and that would give us 41 point whatnot percent. And we'll do that here in Excel. We'll say this is the 11.8 over the 28.6 and enter. And don't let the fact that if it's not even, don't let that throw you. Some problems are going to be, they'll make it perfect. And in the real world, obviously, it's often not perfect. But it's going to be perfect enough to the estimate that we need. So we're going to go to the Home tab, we're going to go to the Alignment, and we're going to increase, put it in a percent. And we can then, we could see that it's rounded. So if I can see that it's rounded, I'm going to go ahead and use this number and know that Excel is actually going to count based on the actual number that it is, not really just that 41, but the actual unrounded number. So we have this divided by the total as well. And if we then percentize that, and then we sum these up, it should add up to 100, 1% or 1 or 100%. All right, so I'm going to underline that. And now what we need to do is we need to allocate this maintenance, this 30,000 here out. However, it's that 30,000 plus the amount of the payroll that we allocated to maintenance, which we calculated up here to be this 4,004. So now we're going to perform that allocation. I'm going to say this equals the 30,000 plus this 4,004 that we included. Let's do that again. This equals the 30,000 plus this 4,440. And this is going to be allocated between C and A. So I'm just going to put that in both areas, multiply that out. So 41% about of the 34,440 gives us the 14,210, and 59% of that same 34,440 will give us the 20,230. If we want to check our work, we'll sum that up on this side, giving us this total here to check that we are coming out to that same 34,440. So now we can basically see the total amount that's going to be allocated to Department C. Remember, we're concentrated on Department C, and we know that we have the direct cost, which is pretty straightforward now because that they gave to us, that equals this 59.5. That's the amount that was given. And then we need to include from that the payroll amount. And of that 22.2 up here, the amount applied out is going to be for payroll. This that went to C is this 4,000. It's the same number, but we're picking up the amount that was allocated to the department. And then the maintenance that was allocated, that's what the last thing that we figured out over here. And that is this 34,440. Nope, I'm sorry. It's this 14,210 that was allocated to C, and enter. And I'm going to go ahead and format these like so. All right. Not sure why it's going to the other side. There's some weird formatting. All right. And then if we total that up, then if we sum that up, if we sum up those three, then the answer will be the 104,150.